What's up, everyone? Grayson the Dean 221 Nichols here on the Elite Rounders YouTube channel. As always, and you all can see I am smiling now. This is my favorite video to do every other month or so when we get the Negreanu versus Hellmuth challenge. And I'm just gonna say it up front, you guys got me. I just, have been a doubter of the white magic time and time again, and he just keeps proving me wrong. And I'm here to admit it. You guys win. You Hellmuth fans, you guys got it. He really came through again. I don't want to give any, total spoilers away, but again, from what I saw, I think he outplayed Daniel. And I marked three particular hands I wanted to talk about with you guys today. One is just, you see it right here already in front of you with a 4-bet with the deuces and Hellmuth in the tank with 8-3 suited. One's pretty wild, this hand, the 8-3. And another is just pure white magic. And then the final one is just a cooler, So these three hands I think were worth discussing. And I'm just going to hop right into it. Make sure to write in the comments what you guys think about these hands, because I do think a few of these are kind of curious spots, to say the least. So what happened in this spot, just to give you a little context, Daniel opened with the deuces and Phil 3-bet with the 8-3 suited. I think this is a fine play. I think having, some 3-bets with your raggedy suited cards at a reasonable frequency heads up is going to make a lot of sense. We've talked about this in other videos. 3-betting is very game flow oriented heads up. So I'm totally cool with this option. Daniel then decides to 4-bet with twos. This is strange to me. I don't have very much cash game background, and I see, I do watch a lot of these videos when I'm trying to do videos for you guys live at the bike, stuff like that. And I see great players like Garrett Adelstein, 4-betting deuces, stuff like that. With a tournament background, this is not something that I usually find relevant or pertinent. In tournaments, I believe that when it comes to twos through sevens, you typically want to see a flop, not a ton of value in putting into your 3-bet, 4-bet bluff range, right? Having said that, there's a lot of metagame going on. You have two of the better players in the world right here. I hesitate to say best. I know Phil, I just can't say it. It just doesn't roll off my tongue. Two of the best players in the world playing here. And so there is, again, some metagame going on. So it makes sense that they're going to throw some of these hands into some strange ranges. So Daniel does decide to 4-bet, reasonable, and he might have had some sort of a read on Hellmuth as well, because Hellmuth was getting kind of out of line in this spot. This is where it gets weird, though, as you guys hear me say often. Hellmuth then comes in with the 5-bet. So Daniel 4-bets to 13,000. Hellmuth then 5-bets to 35,000. This is a super strange spot. You never see 5-bets from Phil, which makes me kind of dig it, because I think his reputation precedes him, and I believe he's able to get away with a lot of stuff because we give him a lot of credit, right? So he 5-bets with the 8-high suited, and Daniel calls since he's in position getting a reasonable price. Flop comes out Jack 6-10 rainbow, a whole bunch of nothing for both guys. Phil immediately checks, and I think I've discussed this in the past videos. I'm not wild about his dark checking play, although I think it's okay in spots where you're going to be checking most of your range. I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense in a spot where he 5-bet pre-flop and won't be checking very often. In fact, he'd be skewed towards betting. So not sure what I think about that check, and I'm kind of curious what went through Daniel's head with that check as well. If I had to guess, I think Daniel probably puts Phil on something like ace-king, maybe ace-queen when he 5-bets pre and then checks this flop. Not sure. We'll come back to that once we get to the end. So Daniel decides to do a little pro bet. He bets 21,000 into a 70K pot. I'm okay with it. I think the idea, again, is that he's putting Phil on ace-king, ace-queen. So this buys him the turn and river, essentially. When, turn comes a blank, Phil checks. And then Daniel can check back and try to fade a royalty card on the river and just assume that he holds up against ace high. Don't hate it. I think it's reasonable. I think a lot of this board can smash the type of stuff that Daniel would call a 5-bet with too. So I would say Daniel has the slight range advantage here, especially after Phil checks. So I think his bet's reasonable. And then Phil calls, again, to add to the weirdness, right? Phil floats out of position with 8-high, nothing. Sure enough, he gets a pretty great turn, very actionable for him. He peels his second club, and he leads out for 42,000. I love this play. I think makes a lot of sense. It's funny, you'll see some solver work that recommends just calling on flops and leading out on board pairs. So maybe he is mixing some studying in with this work, you know. Also, he's just got good instincts. This makes sense. I think his float is a little questionable there. Like, I am curious to know which turns he was going to do this with. Obviously, clubs. Maybe if he hit a nine, he was going to do that. Although I think the nine hits a lot of Daniel's range. So I'm very curious if he had like a steadfast plan behind this float or if it was very guttural, a lot of feeling. And I know how this guy plays. He's a lot of feeling, you know, a lot of emotion behind him. So sure enough, he does get that good turn though. Fires out 42K and Daniel lets it go as he should. I can't imagine continuing at the deuces here. Daniel did give it some thought. But he ends up folding, and this is the first huge pot of the match, and quite the inflection point, where again Daniel was off to a strong start, and Phil just pulls the tricks out of his hat and really, you know, wins a pot he had no right winning in the first place. So really impressive hand from Phil. Definitely an interesting one. And this is, you know, again, this is unusual stuff. You're not going to see this with the solvers. You're not going to see this in GTO. It's just a different ball game that is being played here, and it's fun to watch for sure. So that hand was pretty wild, but the one that blows me away is a little bit simpler and was just before this hand, but I just had to share this with you guys because there is no explanation to what we saw here other than just absolute white magic. And what we witness is Phil, as usual, the blinds are 200, 400. Phil goes ahead and limps in with ace jack suited. And Daniel raises it up to 2,800 with the ace queen. And this is a spot too where, excuse me, actually it's 400, 800. This is a spot where, again, Hellmuth's been limping a lot of hands. We've talked about this. I'm not wild about his limping on the button strategy. I think you guys should be employing a raise first strategy on the button most of the time. But, you know, he mixes it up. He does some weird stuff. I get it. So this is one of the hands that clearly would be in the upper echelon of his button limping strategy, right? So you'd think maybe even a limp raise is coming afterwards, certainly a limp call. Hellmuth sits there for like 30 seconds and thinks, and he freaking folds this hand. He actually says, and I quote, "Oh fuck," and then mucks his hand. I don't know what he saw or what happened there, but something happened. Some white magic came out, and he makes this insane fold. He just mucks the ace jack, and you can see Daniel's face. He's like, you know, like Hellmuth gives him the smirk, like saying like he folded something big. He tells him he folds ace jack. Daniel can't believe it. Daniel wins this hand, yet I feel like watching this hand live, the wind was sucked out of Daniel's sail immediately. I couldn't believe he folded here. There is just no explanation for this. I'm going to go on record and say that this is a bad fold long term, but it's hard to say because, again, I think the limp is flawed in the first place. There's a lot of a weird dynamic going on here. I think he should have just raised with the ace jack suited. Daniel three bets. He calls in position. But having played it this way, the fold is even crazier, to be honest. So, you know, again, either this guy's magic or he has some crazy live read on Daniel. And my thinking is that Hellmuth does read people very well. It's one of his strong suits for sure. So I'm guessing that he had a specific live read on Daniel and just made one hell of a fold. So absolutely crazy. I don't know how many folds I've seen that are like this, that are so spot on. They're just so out of the norm, but I mean, kudos to this psychopath. What an amazing fold here. I just don't even know how to read into this one. This is something special right here. And so this does show that Hellmuth clearly is playing a fundamentally, you know, contrarian strategy, and in some points not fundamentally sound, but he makes up for it with his excellent reads, and his unorthodox plays sometimes work to his benefit. So this was an absolutely insane fold. That was completely correct by the man himself. So that was the hand, honestly, I was just most blown away by. Like, when he folded that, my jaw just dropped. I had no idea what was going on, to be honest. And this is why I continually lose money to my student betting on Daniel over and over again, because I just think the white magic can't strike multiple times. But I have learned now, you don't bet against the man anymore. You just don't do it. I've learned my lesson. It took me getting slapped on the wrist 3 times to figure it out, but I don't know if I could bet against this guy anymore. And so here is the final hand, the cooler. We all saw this coming, with the cadence of the match. There was just no doubt that the 8 was going to peel on the turn here. Pretty standard open from Daniel. Phil defends in the big blind, also standard. And Phil checks. Daniel c-bets with his gut shot backdoor flush draw. Phil calls with his gut shot and flush draw. And lo and behold, the offsuit 8. Just like the card of all cards. Phil hits the second nuts. Daniel has the third nuts. And we all know what's going to happen here. It's a no-brainer. There's absolutely nothing Daniel can do here. I'm a huge, advocate of trying to find ways to fold certain hands, trying to find different ways to spin it or play it. But this one, it's going down no matter what. There's nothing Daniel could have done otherwise here. Good raise pre-flop, good c-bet on the flop. Just a really damn unlucky card for the guy. So Hellmuth checks with his monster. Daniel goes ahead and c-bets. Well, excuse me, not c-bets. He bets again, though. Double barrels, and Phil check raises. Daniel makes it 12. Phil makes it 30. And I think this is a relatively easy all-in for Daniel. He's got a monster, but he's still somewhat vulnerable. And it's a spot that Phil looks pretty strong. I would assume that Phil has some sets, 2-pair combos that he is going to be calling Daniel shove with here, and an occasional semi-bluff that Daniel wants to deny equity to. So I think it's a no-brainer all-in here for Mr. Negreanu. He does shove, and he gets the bad news as Phil flips over the absolute nutted hand. Daniel's drawing stone dead. They shake hands, and Phil wins another $200,000 from Daniel, and I lose another $50 to my student, Jake. So that's it, guys. I mean, I believe it now. I believe the magic. I've seen it. I'm not going to give him a hard time anymore. I'm still going to point out some of his crazier plays because they are fun to go through and, analyze. But I'm going to give him some credit. Clearly, the antics, clearly the contrarian nature, it's doing something because it's definitely not luck to beat Daniel 3 times in a row, especially after Daniel's been trading so hard this year. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Phil adjusted in games 2 and 3. He played way more aggressively. He was super tight in the first one. And I think the essence of this game is adjustment. The way you change is going to define how well you adapt to different tables. And something you'll notice if you look at all the best players, their adaptability is strong. They are able to take any situation and mold themselves to it. Yes, they can also, be the sun of the table where everything revolves around them, but they know how to move around and change based on the information given to them. And I'll be damned, but Phil did that this time. He improved a lot. I don't know if Daniel was able to fully adjust to Phil's adjustments, and White Magic once again pulls it off. So you guys win. I salute you, Hellmuth fans. I can't give the guy a tough time anymore. It was an awesome match. I don't know if they're going to have another one after this, but I am excited to keep doing videos on all these heads-up battles. Check out the one I did on the Phil Ivey hand last week. And I will be posting more of these as they keep putting these matches up. But hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to hit that like button. And best of luck on the felt this week. And congratulations, Mr. Phil Hellmuth. Take it easy, guys.